Strat fans, I'm Jimmy James, and you're listening to Strat-O-logy, the show for and by students of Strat-O-Matic. A little different show for you today, not any other segments, only Strat Chat. But I have an amazing interview with a person who has probably written more about Strat than any other person, Glenn Guzzo. So, sit back, grab your cards and dice, and let's roll! Welcome back. On Strat Chat today, I have a wonderful guest, journalist, editor, professor. He coined the name that people like us use. He not only figuratively wrote the book on Strat-O-Matic, he literally wrote the book on Strat-O-Matic. Thank you, Mr. Glenn Guzzo. Thank you for being with us.
Happy to be here. Thanks.
I'm just so excited that you're here. I've heard and read lots of interviews with you over the years, and I love the book. And I have always had a lot of questions I wanted to ask you. You know, a lot of the times I've heard you speak, it was about the game or about Hal or being a great ambassador for the game. But I didn't know a lot about you as the person, and I think when you're talking about the book of Strat, I think, Glenn, you're like a very big chapter in that book for all the things that you've done for being an ambassador of the game. So I'd love to know more about how you got involved with it.
Well, I'll answer whatever questions you got, so shoot.
Okay. So when did you first start playing Strat?
On my 12th birthday, 1963. So I had seen an ad for Strat-O-Matic in a sports magazine. And that was the classic ad with the big right-handed power pitcher. And it said, you know, here's your ticket to hundreds of major league games, and described how real players would perform as they had in real life. I don't think for my generation, my entry into Strat was that much different than a lot of people's. For those of us who are interested in the real ball players and the statistics and maybe beyond just the home team, a bunch of us, you know, sort of invented or tried to play our own dice baseball game. And most of us could relate that our games were entirely unrealistic. They didn't have any players rated for their skills. We just rolled the dice randomly for a lineup and kept score. And usually our dice roll probabilities were out of sync. I mean, I'm rolling 2 dice, and 2 and 12 are homers, and 3's a triple, and 10's a double, and 9's a walk, and 7's a single. And now you add that up and you got like a 500 on base percentage. Yeah. So we got pretty high scores there. And, you know, anybody could be the leading hitter in the league or leading home run hitter in the league, or the leading pitcher in the league. So now I'm reading this ad, and Strat-O-Matic, you know, and there I can actually get Maury Wills to steal the most bases, and Willie Mays to hit the most home runs, and other guys be the best fielders, and Sandy Koufax strike out the most guys. And I'm saying, that's for me. So I asked Mom to buy it for me. It was $10 for the whole game at the time. And it came on my birthday, and it started a wonderful journey that is not yet over. I've never had a year when I didn't play a lot of Strat-O-Matic.
Oh, that's wonderful. Who was your team when you were growing up? Yeah, you're from Detroit, right?
I'm from Detroit, and so, but I grew up on a house that bordered a park. And of course, all the houses that bordered the park had kids. And it seemed like in our neighborhood, just about every house had 2 sons. My brother is a year younger than me. And there was the Owens and the Exels and the Lubecks and so many others. And we played sports all day, all year in that park. And we were pretty precocious sports fans, preteens even. While it was okay, just fine to root for the home team, if you were really cool, you knew everything there was to know about some other team. So I adopted around 1961, I adopted the Cincinnati Reds with Frank Robinson and Vada Pinsner, pretty flashy. I would see them on This Week in Baseball. and the Reds were unexpectedly contending in the National League. And I said, well, that's my team. And so your team back then, some guy had, his team was the Pirates and somebody else was the Twins, you know, and it meant you had to know all the players. You had to know their jersey numbers. You had to know, obviously, whether they hit left or right, what they were doing. But you also had to know, like, the beer jingle. Because we would pick up games on the radio at night from whatever cities had a 50,000 watt station. And so even to this day, I could probably sing the Wiedemann beer commercial for Cincinnati Reds.
Oh, very cool. You know, you could probably hear it again because on 365 Sportscast, they do the buried treasures where they replay the old games, and they have all the commercials inside of them too.
Well, a lot of nights, after playing all day in the park, a lot of nights we'd get together and listen to the game, drink soda and eat chips, and either play Strat-O-Matic or play Pinochle. It's like, but it was the guys, spending the whole day together one way or another. And, we played an awful lot of Strat-O-Matic.
Favorite card growing up? Who's your guy?
Oh, gosh. Well, being a Reds fan, the 1962 Frank Robinson card was always a favorite. You look at the basic card of that, especially the original. I think his extra bases start in the 3 column at 3-4, 3-5, and I think the extra bases, even at 3-8, it's something like double 1 to 16. It's just this tremendous power batting average on base card, and the guy could run.
Yeah.
And he was a 2 in the field. He wasn't a 1, but he was, he was really a superstar. And many years later, I was in a 1959 league with people around the country. I had the 3rd pick in the draft. It was actually intended to be a keeper league, and it was. And picking 3rd, I picked Frank Robinson because I knew what great cards he was going to have, not just a good card in 59, but all the great cards he was going to have coming up for a long time. So Mays and Aaron went ahead of him. And then after that, I got Frank, and as it turned out, my 59 team won the championship, so it worked out fine.
Yeah. Well, since we're talking about some of your team stuff now, I know you play the baseball, and I've seen interviews where you were talking about the football before, but do you play the basketball and the hockey also?
Yes.
Wow.
In fact, I got hockey on the tabletop right now. I'm playing some teams from the 1967-68 season. I've also divided up the Hall of Fame and Heroes sets into 12 nation teams, and I'm going to have a league with that. But I play less of those games. Those games will take me an hour to play, whereas a baseball game will take me 15 minutes. And if I'm playing on the computer, it might take me less than that. So I just finished an 8-team, 154-game season, that I played just in the last 2-3 months. So 616 games are done. It would take me a lot longer to play 616 table basketball games.
Yeah.
So I get a selection of games in. I always want to stay current with the game. And because I grew up when I did, I'm stuck in the 60s, and I love Hall of Famers from back then, the great stars. In fact, I just played a basketball game on the computer last week, taking the 64 Cincinnati Royals with Oscar Robertson and Jerry Lucas, and playing the St. Louis Hawks with Bob Pettit and Zomo Beatty, and great players from back then. So it was fun to make that memory trip.
Yeah, and that about the world teams, that's a very interesting idea. I've never heard anybody doing that. That's
I don't think I'm the only one. There'll be a Russia and Finland, and there'll be at least two Canadian teams, maybe 3. One is for Quebec, one's for Ontario, one's for Western Canada. U.S. will have 2, West and East. And then by the time after I've gotten those in, I will have some that are sort of regions of the United States for teams that don't fit that, so players that don't fit that, and the guys from Carolina and Florida and Tampa and stuff like that will end up on a South team and so forth. Then in the end, I'll have 12 teams. I do have 12 teams. I just haven't played more than a couple games of it yet.
Well, a lot here in America, we don't understand. I think the internationalness of hockey, how it has that outside of America has such a nationalistic following. I lived in Vienna for 5 years, and one of my close friends there played semi-pro, and it's just to see the national teams, the German team and the Austrian team and the Hungarian team, and it's a very big thing in those countries also. Not just here in Canada.
Anybody who's been an NHL fan for the last 25, 30 years surely recognizes the influence of the Russians and the Swedes at least.
Yeah.
Those great Detroit teams that were in the playoffs forever and won a bunch of championships were built on the GM then Jimmy Devellano being ahead of the rest of the NHL and knowing the Russian players.
Yeah.
And so he was picking up a bunch of guys relatively cheap in the draft, Fedorov and Datsuk and defenseman Konstantinov and others. And they were able to supplement their American and Canadian stars with the Russian stars before any other team was doing that. And of course, the Swedes were coming over before that, making a big influence. The Rangers had them with Hedberg and Gustafsson and Washington and Sundin and a whole bunch of others. So I don't know how you could have been an NHL fan and not appreciated Sweden, Finland, and Russia's influence on the Canadian-American game.
Yeah, definitely. You brought up about the computer. So you play card and dice, definitely, and computer. Do you also play Strat 365 ever?
I don't. And the reason I don't is I'm a pretty busy guy, actually, and I generally do not have the ability to just stay up with it every day.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea that, you're going to have a series done today and now you on to the next 3-game series and you stay up with it for a couple of months, that's generally more than I can sustain. But I think it's a phenomenal concept, and I know a lot of people are having great fun with it, and I guess it's pretty addicting. Once you get in, you want to play more.
Yes, it is. Trust me, my bank account will tell you it's very addictive.
$25 a pop, huh?
I want 20, but thank goodness I'm winning a little bit now. That every so often it'll supplement a team or two. So.
Yeah, I've read some comments from people. Basically, some people kind of joke about it. Whenever they get another new $25, it's onto another league. And 365 reminded me from the days we were really little kids, and every time you got 50 cents, you went to the store and got a bunch of packs of cards.
Yep.
It was back then, you could get 6 cards and a stick of gum for a nickel.
Yeah, definitely. It was that dollar that we were taking over to get the new wiffle ball because we hit one over the yard in somebody else's yard. It was that dollar for the wiffle ball.
That was my specialty. I'm a right-handed guy, but I would hit left-handed in a wiffle ball because my bat speed then was fine. So I'd be Reggie Jackson or Babe Ruth or whatever, and my challenge was not only hit it over our garage roof, but I had to hit it over the next yard.
That's what the home run was, over the next yard?
No, those are just the tape measure blasts. Just clearing the roof was no special thing. It had to really travel.
The reason I would hit lefty is because we had a doughboy pool that was in right field. So we had a short porch to right.
There you go.
Because you could go right up to the wall of the doughboy until my buddy crashed into it and my parents just got irate. Our thing was if you hit it over the old guy, they got grumpy. If you hit it over his yard, it was an out and you had to go hop the ball yourself.
Yeah, you had to get it yourself. Take your life.
But it was an automatic out because you stopped the game because you had to go over to his house. Back after this with more Glenn Guzzo.
You're listening to the 365 Sportscast Network, the streaming future of sports talk radio. Listen to us round the clock on the net over 365sportscast.com. On your phone with the 365 Sportscast app, and on your favorite smart speaker by enabling the 365 Sportscast skill and saying, "Play 365 Sports." The views, opinions, and content of the show hosts and their guests appearing are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of 365 Sportscast LLC, its owners and partners, or this network.
I know a lot of people know about Strat-O-Matic, Fanatic, the book, but I'm not sure that a lot of my listeners would have known about the beginnings of your writing for Strat-O-Matic. In 1991, you started the magazine Strat Fan. Were you writing about Strat-O-Matic before Strat Fan?
Yes, probably the first article I wrote for mass consumption would have been about 1976. I was a staff writer at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram at the time. I had a long journalism career in daily newspapers. Started in 1968 in suburban Detroit, and my first daily paper was in Fort Worth, Texas. I went down there in 75. And then in 76, I remember writing a piece for the paper about Strat-O-Matic and interviewing Hal Richmond for that. And that was the first time I'd interviewed Richmond, which of course I visited the place and talked to Hal, hundreds of times since then. But that was fun. I was asked to write a piece for the Kansas City Star. And even though I wasn't on that staff, and then I wrote some magazine pieces. And so over the years, I wrote about Strat-O-Matic publicly dozens of times, but it wasn't until 1991 with the debut of Strat Fan magazine, which I created, that I guess my name became more associated with Strat-O-Matic. I had written stuff not on assignment, but just because I was a Strat-O-Matic player into the Strat-O-Matic Review for years. And whenever something showed up, Del Newell, the editor there, was really one of the princes of a guy, in our hobby, would say Glenn Guzzo, frequent contributor to the Strat-O-Matic Review, but it wasn't anything formal. Strat Fan was formal because I had to put it out every month.
Yes. I understand.
Strat Fan began for a couple reasons. One is I was in a new corporate job that wasn't challenging enough. I needed a way to do things I wanted that entertained me more than the job was entertaining me, and had the time to do it. And so I had always thought about doing my own Strat-O-Matic magazine because there were things that I would like to see in such a magazine that weren't generally available. And that was a lot of analysis of what made the best cards, what made the best teams, the math. I mean, really, the Strat-O-Matic math was not present in prior publications. I wanted to give gamers their voice, but I wanted to give them more than just their reciting their replays. I wanted to be able to ask questions, and not just of me, but of the game company. And I tried to make Strat Fan every month. There was something called the talk show where gamers would ask questions and I'd go get the answers from the game company. So that gave gamers access, albeit indirectly, but it gave them a regular access to the game company that they had not had before. So there's a variety of other ways for people to get involved. I believed in interactivity, even for printed publication. I've always believed in that. And, I would have contests and crossword puzzles that were Strat themed and other things where people could actually engage with the magazine. The contests would be things like guess the fielding ratings that will be coming out. Here's a bunch of rookies. Here's some veterans who became a little more prominent this year. Here's some guys that may not be obvious. And those quizzes turned out to be pretty challenging for the readers.
Well, I definitely think that through the review and then yours, there's a definite link that brings forward our community to where there's not just the game, but there's the wonderful Strat-O-Matic community. And I really believe that your magazine is a big piece of that it really incubated the community, if that makes sense.
Well, it does make sense. I mean, I've lived in 6 states, working in 6 states. I've traveled to most of them. And while I'm never surprised to find someone who's a sports fan who's never played or even heard of Strat-O-Matic, I'm certainly never surprised when I find people who actually light up when they hear the name. And I was at a friend's house not far from here years ago in Jacksonville, actually suburban Jacksonville, Florida, and I mentioned Strat-O-Matic, and I was in his house, and he said, "You mean this?" And he goes to the closet next to this front door, opens it up, and there on the top shelf is a Strat-O-Matic game. That kind of thing. When Strat-O-Matic players meet each other, it's like members of a tribe who speak a language that is unknown outside of the tribe. Yeah. And it's such a joy to find someone who can speak your language. It's pretty hard to stop talking.
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely a camaraderie and a community. It's like, oh, I found a brother.
And I'll bet many of us had the experience of being at a real game and talking about players in Strat-O-Matic context.
Yes.
Where then other fans nearby will end up asking you, "Oh, are you a professional scout?" Talking about these guys I drafted, oh, this guy who's the shortstop now, he's starting to emerge. I drafted him 2 years ago. He's really doing well. And then people say, "Are you a scout?" No, but sort of.
Well, and I had a great introduction to every one of these types of things. My dad had Asperger's and was a super baseball fan. Listened to 162 Days of Giants every single year since they moved to California. He would not miss it. They can be very driven and very focused. Right. And he read about rotisserie baseball in the 70s. And so by the early 80s, all the kids in the neighborhood were doing head-to-head fantasy. And my dad would take the newspapers on Saturday and work everybody's out. So when we started playing Strat in the early 80s, my dad would set up leagues for us, and he would do all of our stats for us. And
now, was he in the league, or was he just like the commissioner?
He would be the commissioner, and all the kids in the neighborhood would be playing.
And I think a league that has a non-playing commissioner who actually knows what he's doing is a really special thing. Holds it all together, makes sure things don't get too wild when somebody gets upset or whatever.
And he was the perfect guy for that because of his calmness and all my friends loved to come over, and they'd all would have come over and play video games against him. And my dad was the first computerized accountant in the whole valley in California. And on Nintendo, with him being computerized and ASCII, he would mow them down one after the other. All the way till I was in college. On Friday nights, they'd come over to get their butts kicked by my dad in video games.
Like, who's got next?
That's it. My dad would never, that's the day when you had 3 lives and you were out. My dad never leave the machine. They'd just rotate my friends through. But but he really installed that in us, and about that how to set leagues up and how to set up schedules and everything like that. And all the skills from those I brought into even when I was coaching Little League. They're like, oh, who can help us put a schedule together? Oh, I can, because of Strat-O-Matic.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in elementary school, I was always the statistician for our recess stats,
Oh, yeah.
We play soccer or softball or whatever it was, during recess, and I'm keeping the stats. I was playing, but, I'd get back to class, and I managed to just stop paying attention to the teacher for long enough to compile the goals and assists.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And everybody was very interested in it. But, it's pretty common for Strat-O-Matic players to have a bit of OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder.
Definitely.
We want all of the cards and play the full season and keep all the stats and have them come out pretty close and analyze it.
Yeah, the completionist in us, it really checks those boxes very well, I think.
Well, I think that's where 365 comes in too, is everybody can complete, their activity in a couple months. The most common frustration I hear of players of Cards and Dice Sims is they can't finish their replay, they can't finish their project. They get all excited about doing it. It almost sounds like a pregnancy or something where, the initial stages of, is pretty exciting. And then the labor comes in and that's painful.
Yeah.
But when the birth is given, then it's a great joy again. Well, but so many people say, okay, I spent all this time. I'm really excited about this project. I got about 60 games into the season. I just ran out of gas. They don't know how to organize the completion they want to achieve.
Yes.
And they're unrealistic about how much time they have or what their attention span is or how interesting this project's going to be to actually play versus set up and imagine. But 365, takes care of that for you. You can do the setup and you can stay engaged, but the computer gets you to the finish line.
Yes. And it does it in it's 8 weeks. So, it's not something that it's easy. It's a shorter chunk of time that you're playing. And I think that, I'll tell you, with our 24-man league, that 2 weeks while we're in the playoffs and only, 8 or 4 and then 4, then 2 guys are playing. Oh my gosh. Those 2 weeks, the guys are chomping at the bit. What are we going to play next? What are we going to play next? Because the winner gets to pick the set. So,
that's a pretty big deal. That's a pretty big deal.
And a 24-man league is different than a 12.
Yeah, it's huge. And it's great for thinning out the talent. Although if you're playing ATG, you've got so many cards to choose from. Everybody's got stars, right?
Yeah. Okay. Well, then, since we just brought those all up, I have a segment of the show called My Secret Weapon. And it's that card you love to play. Now, I started in the 80s, and our first set was 84, but we also had the 86. And so I love that Cal Daniels 86 as my right-handed DH. And now ever since it's the ATG, I got the 87, which is even better. So what's that guy that you got that you're like, man, this is the guy I got here in my back pocket where I'm going to draft him?
The guy that nobody else will realize has got value or something, and he ends up being, I'll tell you one card just come to mind right now. The 2019 Locastro card. Take a look at this guy. He's got like 20 hit by pitch chances. And so he's got like 41 on base both ways. He's an asterisk 20. He's a 2-1 in the corner outfields. Now he's W power, but I look at guys and say, how good is this guy at getting himself in scoring position? Well, obviously, extra base hits does that for you right away. But a guy who has heavy on base and superlative speed, Ricky Henderson, can ruin a league too. Well, Castro, if you're in a league that allows him to be used more than he actually was, you put him in leadoff, especially against lefties, but he could also do it against righties. And I did that in a league, and my opponent got so frustrated and upset about Castro because when a guy can steal second and third, he's an Astros 2013, I think it is. He's going to be able to steal third if the pitcher's hold on is not very good.
Yeah.
And even if he's a threat to steal third, just the fact that he has to be held, two infielders are involved, ruins the defense a bit. So, the two fielder becomes a three fielder if he's involved in the hold. And now you get these extra hits. So you can't have a whole team of the Castros and win. But talk about a secret weapon that you can get in the last pick of the draft who is going to be able to deliver serious value for you. He shouldn't be your MVP, but he's going to be one of those guys that says, well, because I had him, I was able to win.
No, I think that value is the difference between when you're playing with good players is the difference between winning and losing.
Yeah, in a draft, you want the 5 skill players, but everybody knows who they are. There are no secret weapons there. It's just a matter of whether you got an early enough pick to get one. And by 5 skills, I'm talking about guys who have on base, who have hits, who have power, who have speed, and who have defense, usable speed. So those are the 5 for me. And of course, that doesn't put defense at anywhere near 50%, but defense is part of it. And the guys who win, I think, are the ones who have the most players who have at least 3 skills, 3 of the 5. Again, the 5 skill guys, there aren't that many. Everybody knows who they are. They're going to get distributed. The 4 skill guys are pretty obvious. The 3 skill guys are important. And one of the couple of the issues of Strat Fan, I think maybe on a 3-part series I called Building the Perfect Beast. And I started off, the first piece was, okay, I'm going to give you this team. You're going to have average pitching, but your lineup is going to have all ones up the middle. You're going to have the leading home run hitter of the major leagues. You're going to have the leading stolen base guy of the major leagues. Every one of these guys is going to be 25 or younger. How eager are you to have this team? What do you think you can do with it? Well, when I pointed out that the ones up the middle involved Kurt Manwaring and Jose Lind, and when the leading home run hitter was the only guy in the lineup who had 20 homers or more, and the leading stolen base guy was the only real threat to steal, the point was you can't build a great team with a bunch of 1 skill players. And so if you can get a bunch of 3 skill players, now you can get team speed. And now you can get team power. And now you can get team defense. And going back to my semi-favorite team, the Cincinnati Reds, that I've been rooting for since 1961, if you look at the Reds teams, the big red machine teams, they had a bunch of guys who might not be the best at what they did, but they were good at several things. Bench had power and great defense. He wasn't always a high average hitter, but his average was good for a catcher. Ken Griffey Sr. hit for average, had great speed, had some extra bases. Dave Concepcion had great speed, great defense. Some of those years he hit around 280. He was useful. Cesar Geronimo, great defense, great speed. his batting averages, some years were pretty good, some years not. But by the time he did it all with Perez and Foster and the others, you said, wow, this team, like, and Rose, of course, everybody is like, there's speed threats everywhere in the lineup. Almost everybody's a threat to hit it out of the park. Most years Concepcion wouldn't be, and Geronimo was iffy on that, but they had a lot of team power. They had all ones up the middle, good throwing arms. And so there wasn't any real weakness in the lineup. Now the pitching was, not so great to stand up against the greatest teams of all time, but they could just wreck any replay of 1975 or 1976.
Yeah. Definitely, they were an amazing team, and like you said, it was really a team. Especially, what do you think about when guys play like, they're all or nothing teams? Those guys, I got 4 guys who are everything, and I got 5 guys who can't do anything.
Well, if I can't work my way defensively or through that lineup, then I've got a problem. And so with pitchers, now you're with the 4 guys who can do everything, you're always susceptible to a big inning and that wrecks the game for you. But if you're also answering with good pitching and good defense, then some of those guys are not going to live up to their numbers. And when the game's on the line, I can move a lefty pitcher into this guy and a righty pitcher into this guy. I just played a playoff series with mentioned I'm in this year-long league. I've been piloting the 1993 San Francisco Giants.
Yeah! I'm a Giant.
In a league with 7 other guys around the country. We play head-to-head online. They're all the teams were National League successful teams from 86 Mets to 94 Expos. And the Giants just won the regular season and won the first round of the playoffs. Well, the deciding game 6 of the first round of the playoffs, I had to start a pretty weak pitcher, Jeff Brantley, who got lit up by the same team he was facing. It got lit up 3 times during the regular season. But I made sure by starting my best pitcher in front of him the earlier game and having the day off, so the guys pitched game 6, I had a fully rested bullpen, and I used 8 pitchers in that game. And a righty got through the inning 1, 2, 3 in the 6th. The lefty got through the inning 1, 2, 3 in the 7th. Another righty came through 1, 2, 3 in the 8th, and then Rod Beck closed it out with a 1, 2, 3 9th. So in that way, I could work around the 1990 Cincinnati Reds, who had a pretty good mix of lefties and righties. So now I got to wait to see who my World Series opponent is.
Well, and I personally, I like to have a lineup that you can move through, that's got enough on base, even at some of the other positions that aren't as good of hitters, so that I can, just guy after guy. And that's one thing that 93 Giants team has.
They're pretty good at it. I mean, I did, in this league where there's good pitching everywhere, it's, my team batting averages weren't great. 249 as a team. I think I was 6th in the league in batting average, but I had the most runs in the league. Part of that was I had the most homers, but Bonds hit 49 and Matt Williams hit 38. Bonds was first in the league and Williams was 3rd. But almost everybody in the top, say 11 guys, batters, had value. And they, especially in a matchup situation, against this kind of a starter, this guy has real value that he doesn't have against opposite hand starters. And so I was able to platoon at first and right field and shortstop and get a lot out of some lesser guys. But I think lineup construction, you listen to certain sabermetrics people. I'm a member of Saber. I helped organize the national convention in Denver for Saber, ran the first ever program on sports simulation games, which was great. We had Bill James on a panel and we had a bunch of other good people. And so I'm all for it. But the idea that lineup construction doesn't matter, that the number of runs you're going to score isn't about sequential offense. I don't find that to be true in my experience of playing Strat-O-Matic. If I've got a lineup that goes right, left, right, left, it's tough for the other guy to keep a reliever in long enough without having a bad situation for him. If I've got guys batting 8th and 9th who go up in the clutch, that's really helpful because those guys are going to bat often with 2 outs.
Mm-hmm.
If I've got those guys batting 8th and 9th who also have some speed and a bit of on base, either on base or power.
Mm-hmm.
So one year, I might have been the 87 set. You mentioned the 80s that you like.
Mm-hmm.
I had a very potent team, won it all. And I think my 8th hitter was Juan Samuel's best card. And he was a 3, not a 4 that year at second. He's 1-17 speed. He went up, I don't know, +4, +8 in the clutch. And he had hit a lot of extra base hits that year. So his batting average wasn't great. It was okay. His on-base average was never great because he didn't walk much.
Yeah.
But batting down in that spot, he goes up in the clutch. The hits he's got involve a lot of extra bases. If he gets on at all, his speed is helpful when the top of the order comes around. And he was as valuable a component of that team as the great Eric Davis card I had batting in the middle, or I had Von Hayes and Kevin Seitzer were good hitters, and Dave Winfield and a bunch of other guys. And I think batting right ahead of Samuel against lefties was the catcher David Valley. Do you remember him?
Yeah.
Really good throwing catcher who had tremendous pop.
Yep.
Didn't have the batting average or the on base, but against lefties, he was a serious threat. And
I like to use him as against lefties.
Yeah, and against righties, I had Carlton Fisk. So, I had a situation there where no matter what you were pitching, I had a pretty good catcher. Anyway, point is I think a well-constructed lineup matters. And the lefty-righty's part of it, the speed and the clutch and the power is part of it. There may not be a perfect way to set up the lineup. You may not have all the elements you want to get it perfect, even if you knew how. But the idea that you can put anybody in any order, I don't think that makes a lot of sense.
No, I don't. I definitely don't think so either. A couple times recently, I played in the '90s mystery set, the Phil Plantier card.
And ringer card.
If you get the rookie here, you could get the MVP with it. And if you get that third year, he's that perfect guy like you're talking. I mean, he kills righties, but he's not a bad guy to put at the end of the lineup against lefties because, he cleans up the scraps.
Well, and, later in the game, the other guy's probably not got his starting pitcher in the game. And so now, he may be facing righties after all.
Yeah.
So how many at-bats did Plantier have that year?
Oh, well, the rookie year, he's only got like 98.
And
he's got 8 home runs.
How much can you use him in your 365 league?
You can use him as much as you want.
There's the perfect ringer.
He is. Oh, he's. I love him. I love using that card, and because it's almost never picked.
I have written this before, but you talk about secret weapon cards. We were in a draft league, a buddy of mine and I. We drafted 6 teams each, 3 American, 3 national. This was back when I lived in Fort Worth in the late 70s, mid 70s, late 70s, and we had a rule. It said if a guy didn't have 100 plate appearances, he was ineligible. And if he had less than 150, he could only pinch hit. All right. So one year with about the sixth round of the draft, I picked Roger Freed. He had a St. Louis Cardinals first base card. I'm going to have trouble remembering the year, whether it was 76 or 78, might have been 77. Anyway, one of those in there. And he had hit, I have to look up the stats, or maybe if you've got it handy, there were Baseball Reference or something. but I want to say he had a batting average way up in the 300s, tremendous power, triples and homers galore, walks. We played a 60-game season. Fried could only get one swing per game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Only a pinch hitter. He had 96 at-bats and 4 walks. So he just cut off at 100. We could use him as a pinch hitter. So I, of course, got him an at-bat every game.
Yeah.
And in 60 games, he drove in 30 runs.
Oh.
Batting once.
It's perfect. It's perfect.
You know, I tried to never bat him until there were a couple guys on.
Yeah.
So, and he was just a home wrecker, you know.
Yeah, I'm trying to use in the ATG9 set Del Rice. I can't remember which year it is. He's got this killer year.
50s, right? Got to be 50s.
Yeah, and he's got a 6 injury, but I'm only hitting him against lefties, and that supreme power.
You pay nothing to get him, right?
$2 million.
Yeah.
And he's going to hit 19 home runs if he can stay on the field. So I'm seeing how much it can go. I'm seeing how far that 6 will hinder me.
You will get an injury. So
he's been injured. But he's still crushing it. Back with more after these messages.
You're listening to the 365 Sportscast Network, the streaming future of sports talk radio. Listen to us round the clock on the net over 365sportscast.com. On your phone with the 365 Sportscast app, and on your favorite smart speaker by enabling the 365 Sportscast skill and saying, "Play 365 Sports." The views, opinions, and content of the show hosts and their guests appearing are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of 365 Sportscast LLC, its owners and partners, or this network.
Okay, next question for you, just because we're going to be out of time here for this. I got 15 more questions for you, Glenn. So if one day you'll come back, I would love it. I have had such a great time.
Sure, we'll do it again.
Are you working on any projects with Strat right now? Any cool things coming up for you?
Well, I do the bulk of the ratings work for the company on the baseball game and the football game, and have been since about 2007. I also do a fair amount of writing for them with product descriptions and newsletter stuff. And every week, I'm also in a conference call for strategic consulting. Strat-O-Matic considers me a full-time consultant. That has been true since, right around that 2007 time or so.
Well, we're lucky they have you, Glenn. We are.
Well, it's whenever your work can be an extension of your hobby, labor of love, I'm the one who's lucky. And in fact, the people at Strat-O-Matic are really good people. And so, I've worked around the country with different organizations, and one of the most important things is to enjoy the people you work with, to feel they have integrity and collegiality. And we have that. And there are a lot of times I suggest things to Strat-O-Matic that turn out to be some things they do. And there are a lot of times I suggest things that they just say, nah, I'm not doing it. But, so I'm really not at liberty to divulge what I know is coming that they're not ready to announce.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say that the company is constantly interested in whether it can practically do things that will fill a void in the hobby or will fill the requests of its gamers. very much keeps the gamers in mind. There's not a week, my involvement in these conferences, where fan preferences and fan requests aren't brought up. So people may get frustrated that their ideas take years to show up or don't show up at all. I don't think the test is whether our voices win the day. It's a test is whether our voices are really considered seriously.
Mm-hmm.
The game company has a bigger picture than any gamer has, and they know what they can afford to do and what they have the proper time to do and what really makes sense for them to be a priority. And most gamers don't know that. Most gamers can only guess at that. You might have a great idea, but it may take longer to execute it than can be justified by the expected return.
Yeah.
Or that it's as good an idea as it is, it's still lower on the list of priorities of some other things that are bigger payoffs for the company and bigger payoffs for the hobby. And that's something that not everybody gets to hear. In fact, most people wouldn't get to hear it. And so they may not understand. But I think it's important for everybody to know that the game company does listen, wants to listen, and that the fans should keep talking.
I mean, I really think highly of the company. People have to understand that they're not a big company.
No, not at all.
They are, and the amount of stuff they do for their size and the timing and everything, to me, as a business owner, I'm always impressed because I understand the logistics of just getting something out. There's a million things that the public doesn't understand and doesn't see that are just little snags that can happen always. And they were really great. They were actually the very first person who liked us on Instagram with Strat-O-Matic. The very first person. So how can you, every time I've emailed, they've just been wonderful. It's just, it makes you feel good that you're working, helping promote something that you can feel so strongly and so, and have such a big place in your heart for.
Yes, absolutely.
That's one of the wonderful things about. Okay, so real quick, you also have another book called The New Baseball Game: Understanding Baseball Statistics for the Casual Fan. You guys want to tell anybody about that book just a little bit?
Well, sure. Here's my two books that are sports related. I'm also author of a journalism textbook. The New Ball Game was the second book after the Fanatic's book, both published by Acta Sports. And it is devoted to the fan who is either really into stats or who thinks they need to be part of the conversation. They're hearing all this conversation around stats and they need to get up to speed. And so I didn't want to make it just for the newbies. I wanted to make sure that even though that was probably the initial idea that the publisher had, let's let everybody get a chance to get up to speed here. What are these non-traditional stats? What stats really matter? How does it fit into the history of the game? And so I've done that, but I've also put in quite a few things that very devoted fans have told me, oh, gee, there's a lot of stuff in this book I didn't know. So one of the things was there are little sidebars in each chapter that say, impress your friends. And here is some statistical or milestone achievement by baseball players that not everybody realized. But it's pretty cool stuff to know when you're in conversation with other baseball fans. It was a book, actually, that I wasn't going to do. It was Acta's idea. Fanatics was my idea, and they published it, and I was grateful. And they came to me back with this other idea, and I said, I don't know how much that would sell. It's really worth the time. And at first I said, no, I don't think so. I'd really rather get into more reported books and, where I can use my journalism experience. But then my conscience hit me. And I said, these guys published my first book. They want this book. Let me see what I can do. So I called the editor back and said, how much reporting do you need of this? Do I have to go find 50 sources like I did for Strat-O-Matic Fanatics, Or are you happy with a single knowledgeable voice that has a lot of examples? No, we'll do the latter. I said, okay, I can do that. So we got the second book out. And it has had a smaller following than Fanatics. Fanatics was really well reviewed in a lot of helpful places. USA Today Baseball Weekly called it one of the 10 best baseball books of the year, and it won a national award, a small award, bronze medal, for best sports book of the year. And got nice reviews in LA, and I was interviewed on radio on NPR and a couple of times on ESPN radio, and it was a really well-received book. The greatest thing for an author is someone tell you, I read your book and I liked it.
One of the things I think that makes the book special for us, Glenn, is we get to see that it's not just us.
Yep.
I think the intermixing between, it really helps us understand how the game came about with Hal. And so then that shows us how special and how lucky we are we got the game. But then there's when you're reading about Keith Hernandez or you're reading about John Miller, and about how they were playing when they were a kid, just like you. It wasn't only, me, it was also Spike Lee that was on his stoop.
Yeah. And,
it connects you.
It's one of the things that really struck me. Now, look, I'm a professional journalist. I was editor of the Denver Post. I was managing editor at Sports there in Philadelphia. I've had a pretty big career. I'm used to interviewing big-time people. However, I was really struck by the fact that I was researching this book that as soon as I told people I was under contract to do a book about Strat-O-Matic and I would like to talk to them about it, they dropped everything else. They were so ready to talk about Strat. Spike Lee is out of the country. And I send a note to his studio and say, oh, here I am, this is who I am, and I need 20 minutes of Spike's time, to talk about it. I got a reply instantly. It says, Spike's out of the country. He'll be back on this date. He will call you. And he called me at that time. Hey, it's Spike. Trip Hawkins, the inventor of Madden game, Electronic Arts, was starting his own new digital game company. I call for him because I know he's a Strat-O-Matic player. His development director in San Francisco tells me, well, Trip's out of the country right now, but I'm sure he'll want to talk to you because the only thing he ever talks about is Strat-O-Matic. So I get a call one night from Trip. He's just landed. And he's just got into his car. And he's headed back home. And, in California, some of those commutes are long.
Yeah.
Trip is a phenomenal guy to talk to. What a genius, MIT guy. And I couldn't get him off the phone. I called a guy who was a boyhood friend of Hal's, who's now one of the busiest, most prominent AIDS doctors in the nation, or was then when I wrote the book. And got him, on a day when ordinarily nobody'd be able to get to him. CEOs of companies, general managers of baseball teams. I called up McPhail when he was the general manager of the Cubs, and he picked up the phone right away. And so I was really struck by what the game, or in many cases, what Hal meant to these people.
Mm-hmm.
That just everything. I mean, these people are important people doing a lot of great things, and Strat-O-Matic could get pushed right to the top of their agenda. Mm-hmm. Daniel O'Krent, who is the public editor of the New York Times at the moment, probably gets several hundred emails every day. I email him one night late and say what I'm doing, how I've enjoyed his other work. He was managing editor of Life magazine. He's the editor of a great book called The Ultimate Baseball Book, which I recommend to anybody who wants to know baseball history. And I get up the next morning at 7 a.m. and there's an email from O'Krent back and says, just call me when you're ready. It's not because I'm famous, I mean, I have credibility, but it's because the game has meant so much to these people, or Hal as a friend and a colleague has meant so much to those people. So I never had trouble getting access to anybody.
Oh, that's awesome. I've also noticed that when we've been starting this project that everybody likes to talk about Strat if they're into Strat. And It's one of those things to where, we have our roundtable section, and I always have to pare it down because there's so much stuff that ever comes out and somebody thinks up something or some strategy or something, and you're like, there's just so much that you can talk about. And once you get friends going on it, it can snowball. It can snowball because of
it does.
The history that you have and that they have and how it combines to where you're like, oh yeah. It's a very special thing. Oh, where's the best place for them to buy your books, Glenn?
Well, actually, Fanatics is out of print now, so you're going to have to get in the secondary market. It was in print for a decade or more, but it's not now. I don't even have any more copies, except the one. And the new ball game may still be available from Acta Sports. I'm not sure. It might be.
Are they still selling Strat-O-Matic Fanatic at the Strat website?
They may have a few copies left. They're not promoting it. So you would have to look under other or miscellaneous or whatever, and then it would say, books or something like that.
I think I got mine from them a while back. So
yeah, okay.
I'm going to try to put a link to that if they have it, and then I'll put the link to Amazon so they can grab it there.
That'd be good.
Glenn, I appreciate this so much, you coming on, and I got 18 million more questions and I would love to pick your brain. I didn't even really get to talk to you very much about Strat Fan, and I have so many questions. Is there anywhere that you can read any copies of Strat Fan?
There isn't an archive. Actually, I still have some back issues, if not of every copy. In fact, a lot of them sold out, but if people want to contact me about back issues, I can email them a list of what's available.
Okay.
My email, I'm happy to give it out, is my name, GLENN GUZZO. Make sure you get 2 N's in there, at AOL.com. And if people want to know what's available, I'll be happy to send it to them. If they just got another question, I'll be happy to take it. It's much best I can.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And as far as your 18 million other questions, if you want me on another couple million times, that'll work.
Oh, I would love it, Glenn. I would love it. Dude, I have had a wonderful day today, man. It's been great talking to you. Thank you so much. And we will be right back. A big thank you today to Glenn Guzzo. I hope you guys enjoyed the interview as much as I did. Also, we need to thank our normal cast of characters: Andrew Burkham, Joaquin Lewis, Jimmy Dees, Carolyn Snyder, the music man Jeff Texon. All the music you heard today was written and produced by Jeff. Also, we need a big thank you to our Patreon supporters, and most of all, to you. Find us, like us, follow us on social media. Check out the website, www.strat-o-logy.com. Call us up, leave us a message on the phone line, 855-888-0096, and we will see you soon. Hey, Jeff, can you play us out?
You got it, Jimmy James.
See you next Saturday, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 Pacific, on 365 Sportscast Streaming Radio. Same Strat time, same Strat channel.
listening to the 365 Sportscast Network, the streaming future of sports talk radio. Listen to us round the clock on the net over 365sportscast.com. On your phone with the 365 Sportscast app, and on your favorite smart speaker by enabling the 365 Sportscast skill and saying, "Play 365 Sports." The views, opinions, and content of the show hosts and their guests appearing are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of 365 Sportscast LLC, its owners and partners, or this network.